In the remote wilderness of northwestern Montana, where the Yaak River winds through dense forests beneath the towering Cabinet Mountains, lives a legend cut from a cloth no longer woven. Tom Oar, with hands weathered like the ancient cedar bark, he transforms into magnificent buckskin clothing, stands as perhaps the last true embodiment of America's mountain man tradition. His piercing blue eyes have witnessed the changing of seasons across nearly 8 decades, each wrinkle telling stories of survival against blizzards that would send most modern men scrambling for the comfort of central heating. In a world increasingly disconnected from its roots, Tom's unshakable commitment to a vanishing way of life has made him more than just a reality television star. He's become a living repository of frontier knowledge that stretches back to the very foundation of this nation. Before we begin, don't forget to hit like as a gesture of tribute to this extraordinary mountain man who has touched so many lives with his wisdom and resilience. But behind the captivating smile and seemingly boundless energy that viewers of History Channel's Mountain Men have come to love lies a shadow few understand, a darkness that has followed Tom through mountain passes and across frozen rivers for longer than cameras have documented his journey. In the twilight of his remarkable life, Tom faces challenges that even his legendary resourcefulness may not overcome. At his advanced age, the brutal Montana winters press harder against his cabin walls with each passing year. The body that once moved effortlessly through mountain terrain now betrays him with every creak and ache. Sources close to Tom have described increasing health concerns, though the fiercely private frontiersman rarely acknowledges such troubles on camera. His daily routine of chopping wood, tanning hides, and tracking game, once second nature, now reportedly requires careful pacing and recovery time unseen by television audiences. What happens when a man who has defined himself by self-reliance must finally confront his own mortality? When the skills honed over decades begin to slip through fingers too stiff to grip them tightly? Tom's story begins far from the isolated Montana wilderness he now calls home. Born in northern Illinois during the early 1940s, young Tom grew up in a post-war America racing toward modernization and convenience. His childhood home in Rockford was modest but solid, a small frame house where his father, a factory worker with calloused hands and limited words, would return each evening smelling of machine oil and metal shavings. The Orr family dinner table was a place of simple meals and straightforward values. Work hard, waste nothing, depend on yourself. The Orr household operated on rhythms as predictable as the factory whistle that governed his father's days. Mornings began before dawn, even for children. Tom's mother, gentle but firm, would wake him with a light touch on the shoulder, the scent of percolating coffee already filling their kitchen. By age 7, Tom had regular chores, feeding chickens, carrying firewood, helping his mother preserve garden vegetables in mason jars that lined cellar shelves like soldiers awaiting winter's siege. While other children in his neighborhood became increasingly fascinated with television shows and plastic toys manufactured in distant factories, Tom found himself drawn to the woods beyond town limits. A small creek that ran behind their property became his first wilderness classroom. There he learned to move quietly, to observe the habits of muskrats and raccoons, to recognize which tracks meant dinner and which spelled danger. His father, though not an outdoorsman by passion, recognized something primal in his son's interests and taught him to use a knife properly, not as a toy, but as the essential tool it had been for countless generations before them. "A sharp knife and knowledge will keep you alive when nothing else will," his father told him, words Tom would later credit as the foundation of his life philosophy. The knife his father gave him for his 10th birthday, a simple fixed blade with a worn leather handle, became his constant companion, the first in an unbroken line of blades that would extend throughout his lifetime. School presented challenges for young Tom that the woods never did. Confined to desks in stuffy classrooms, he struggled to focus on subjects that seemed irrelevant to the natural world that called to him. Teachers described him as distant and daydreaming, though they noted his exceptional ability to recall details about animal behavior or weather patterns. While other students memorized multiplication tables, Tom was learning to read clouds and wind direction, skills no standardized test would ever measure, but which would ultimately prove far more valuable to his chosen path. By his early teens, Tom had begun fashioning crude traps based on illustrations in old library books about frontier life. His bedroom shelves displayed an odd collection of treasures: bird feathers arranged by species, interestingly shaped stones, a fox skull bleached white by sun and time. His mother worried about this unusual child who seemed born a century too late, but his father recognized in Tom's interests the echo of something essential and increasingly rare, a connection to land and survival that modern convenience was rapidly erasing. The transition from curious boy to young man brought expectations that Tom struggled to reconcile with his growing certainty that conventional life would never satisfy something restless in his soul. High school became an exercise in endurance rather than education. While classmates discussed college applications and career paths in offices and factories, Tom worked part-time at a local tannery, fascinated less by the paycheck than by the ancient art of transforming raw hide into useful leather. After graduation, when friends donned suits for office jobs or enlisted for military service, Tom surprised no one by declining both paths. Instead, he took a series of jobs that kept him outdoors: logging, guiding occasional hunting parties, seasonal work for the Forest Service. Each position temporary, each teaching skills that would later serve his mountain life. During these years of early adulthood, Tom existed in a strange limbo, one foot in modern society, one already seeking the trail to somewhere more authentic. "I always felt like I was born in the wrong century," Tom would later tell an interviewer, "like I was supposed to be riding with Lewis and Clark or trapping with Jim Bridger." The 1960s and early 1970s rushed by in a blur of cultural revolution that barely touched Tom's growing focus on traditional skills. While America watched Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, Tom was perfecting the art of brain-tanning deer hides using methods unchanged for thousands of years. As Vietnam protested and Woodstock celebrated, he was learning to read weather patterns by watching how pine cones opened or closed. Invisible in a world obsessed with spotlights, technological advancement, and countercultural movements, Tom quietly accumulated the knowledge that would eventually make him extraordinary. His decision to leave conventional society behind came not as a dramatic declaration, but as a series of small steps away from one world and toward another. A temporary cabin built for a summer job became a more permanent structure. Seasonal work became less frequent as self-sufficiency grew. The distance between mailboxes lengthened. Visits to town became monthly, then seasonal events. Rejection followed. Rejection, as Tom attempted to explain his life choices to increasingly bewildered family members and friends. "You're wasting your potential," said some. "You'll come back when winter hits," predicted others. "This is just a phase," was the general consensus. Few understood that what looked like rejection of society was actually a passionate embrace of something older and, to Tom, more meaningful. His early years in the wilderness were marked by trials that would have sent most modern men scrambling back to convenience. The first winter alone nearly broke him. Temperatures dropping to -40 degrees, food stores miscalculated, a brutal bout of influenza that left him feverish and alone for days, with no help possible. He later admitted he nearly died that year, saved only by skills already developed and pure, stubborn determination. In those difficult early years, Tom learned through often painful experience the lessons no book or mentor had fully prepared him for: how to predict storms by watching pine needles stiffen, how to preserve meat when salt runs short, how to maintain sanity during the endless dark of northern winter nights. Each lesson etched itself permanently into his growing reservoir of knowledge. And that's when everything changed. In the late 1970s, a chance encounter with a wildlife photographer visiting the region brought the first hint of outside interest in Tom's unusual lifestyle. The resulting article in a regional outdoor magazine presented him not as an eccentric recluse, but as something more profound: a custodian of vanishing knowledge, a modern link to America's frontier past. That first small spotlight illuminated something that even Tom hadn't fully recognized. His life choices represented not just personal preference, but the preservation of an endangered cultural heritage. The photographer's article led to occasional visitors, writers, craftspeople, young idealists seeking to learn traditional skills. Tom, initially reluctant, discovered a surprising satisfaction in sharing his knowledge. His hands, which could transform a deer hide into supple buckskin clothing using only natural materials, became teaching tools. His stories of survival, previously shared only with the silent forest, found eager listeners. Word spread slowly through certain circles about the authentic mountain man living as if the last century had never happened. A small trickle of commissions for his handcrafted buckskin clothing began to supplement his subsistence lifestyle. Each jacket, pair of gloves, or moccasins represented hundreds of hours of labor, from the hunting and skinning to the brain tanning process to the impeccable hand stitching using sinew thread. His work became coveted not just for its practicality, but for its connection to a vanishing tradition. Tom's relative obscurity might have continued indefinitely, his influence limited to the small circle of traditional skills. Enthusiasts who sought him out, had History Channel producers not been looking for authentic subjects for a new reality series about people living off the grid. Mountain Men premiered in 2012, and suddenly the solitary figure who had spent decades perfecting forgotten skills found himself with an audience of millions. The transition from anonymity to television personality came with challenges Tom could never have anticipated. Camera crews disrupted the rhythms of wilderness life he had carefully cultivated. The necessity of explaining processes that had become instinctual forced him to articulate knowledge long held in his hands rather than his words. Privacy, once abundant as the forest itself, became suddenly scarce. Yet something remarkable happened as viewers watched this soft-spoken, authentic frontiersman navigate his world. In a television landscape crowded with manufactured drama and performative personalities, Tom's genuine character and unassuming expertise stood out like a campfire in darkness. Viewers responded not just to his survival skills, but to the evident peace he had found in choosing a difficult path aligned with his deepest values. Season after season, ratings confirmed what producers had gambled on. America was hungry for authenticity in an increasingly artificial world. Tom, never seeking fame or validation, found himself an unlikely cultural touchstone. Fan mail arrived by the sackful. Viewers of all ages expressed how watching him had awakened something dormant in their own spirits, a recognition that perhaps progress had come at costs not fully calculated. At the height of the show's popularity, Tom's life achieved a strange balance few could have predicted. For part of each year, he lived his traditional existence, hunting, trapping, crafting, surviving. For another part, he accommodated camera crews, interviews, and the machinery of modern media. The mountain man had become a reluctant bridge between worlds that rarely connected. His mastery of traditional skills gained over decades impressed even skeptical viewers. The way he could look at a stretch of river and know exactly where fish would shelter, how he could gauge the severity of coming winter by examining the thickness of animal fur, his ability to transform a freshly killed deer into food, clothing, and tools with minimal waste. These weren't performances for television, but the authentic application of knowledge acquired through thousands of repetitions across a lifetime. "What Tom knows can't be learned from books or YouTube videos," one producer reportedly commented. "He doesn't just do these things, he embodies them. They're as natural to him as checking email is to the rest of us." The show captured Tom's practical wisdom, his remarkable self-reliance, and the stunning beauty of his chosen home. Viewers watched as he navigated Montana's punishing winters with calm competence, preparing months in advance for isolation that would terrify most modern people. They witnessed his reverence for the natural world, not the performative environmentalism of urban dwellers, but the deep respect born from complete dependence on nature's systems. But here's where it gets complicated. The very fame that brought Tom's lifestyle to national attention began to threaten the solitude that made that lifestyle possible. Fans, inspired by the show, occasionally attempted to locate his remote property. Local businesses in nearby towns began advertising their proximity to mountain men territory. The wilderness that had offered escape from society's complexities was increasingly influenced by the outside world's awareness. Tom's relationship with the show itself became nuanced. On one hand, it provided financial security that eased some of the harsher aspects of his subsistence living. On the other, it demanded time and energy that might otherwise have gone into the seasonal work necessary for wilderness survival. The cameras captured authentic moments, but inevitably altered the reality they sought to document. As seasons progressed, attentive viewers might have noticed subtle changes. Certain tasks that Tom had previously handled alone were now occasionally assisted by off-camera helpers. Some hunting and trapping sequences became less frequent as animal rights activists targeted the show with criticism. The pure documentation of mountain living began to accommodate the practical and ethical constraints of modern television production. For Tom himself, the greatest complexity lay in reconciling his lifelong desire for independence with his new role as public figure. The deeply private man who had once gone months seeing only his wife now regularly revealed intimate aspects of his life to millions of strangers. The wisdom he had accumulated for purely practical survival reasons was now valued as entertainment. Success had brought security, but also compromise. Behind the scenes, according to those familiar with production, Tom occasionally expressed ambivalence about his participation. "I'm not doing anything special," he reportedly told one crew member. "I'm just living the way people used to live." The fact that it seems remarkable now says more about what we've lost than what I've found. Health challenges, mostly kept private, added another layer of complexity. The physical demands of mountain living, constant wood chopping, hauling water, tracking game through difficult terrain, took an inevitable toll on a body moving through its seventh and then eighth decade. Injuries that might have healed quickly in youth lingered longer. Recovery periods extended. The camera captured Tom's unwavering spirit, but couldn't document the increasing physical cost of maintaining his lifestyle. Now, if you're wondering about the accuracy of the show itself, it's important to understand the nature of reality television. While Mountain Men presents Tom's life more authentically than many reality programs portray their subjects, television production necessarily compresses time and occasionally restructures events for narrative clarity. A trap line that might take Tom days to check gets condensed into minutes of screen time. The genuine dangers of his lifestyle are present, but somewhat moderated by the safety requirements of production insurance and the presence of crew members. Sources close to production have confirmed that Tom's skills and lifestyle are genuine, even if the presentation sometimes accommodates television's demands for drama and structure. His knowledge wasn't acquired for cameras, but through decades of practical application. The buckskin clothing he creates isn't costume, but functional art that keeps its wearer warm in brutal conditions. The relationship with wildlife isn't performative, but essential to his survival. Viewers sometimes question whether Tom truly lives this way year-round or only during filming. According to multiple interviews and sources familiar with his situation, the answer lies somewhere in between these extremes. While cameras document only portions of each year, Tom maintains his traditional lifestyle throughout all seasons. However, as he's aged, he and his wife reportedly spend portions of the harshest winter months in a more accessible location in Florida, a concession to health and comfort that the younger Tom might have resisted, but that the older man has accepted with characteristic pragmatism. Through it all, Tom's relationships have anchored him through transitions and challenges that might have overwhelmed a solitary spirit. His wife Nancy, his partner in wilderness living for decades, has remained largely in the background of the television narrative, but central to the reality of his daily existence. Their partnership represents a shared commitment to values increasingly rare in modern relationships: absolute interdependence, unwavering loyalty, and the quiet understanding that comes from facing countless challenges together. "Nancy and I don't need to talk much," Tom once explained in a rare comment about their relationship. "When you've been with someone through 40 below zero nights with the woodpile running low, you develop a different kind of communication." The depth of their connection becomes apparent in small moments the cameras occasionally capture, the way they move around their cabin in perfectly choreographed efficiency, anticipating each other's needs without words, the gentle humor that surfaces in brief exchanges after decades together, the evident respect between two people who have each carried their full share of an exceptionally demanding lifestyle. Beyond Nancy, Tom has formed meaningful connections with fellow traditional skills practitioners, neighboring landowners who respect his privacy, and a small circle of friends who understand his choices. The show introduced viewers to some of these relationships, particularly with other mountain residents who share aspects of his self-sufficient approach, if not its complete expression. Perhaps most poignantly, Tom has developed a special bond with young people interested in learning traditional skills. Though childless himself, he has become a kind of cultural grandfather to a generation increasingly aware of what's been lost in our rush toward technological convenience. Apprentices seeking his knowledge have been welcomed at his fire, and his patient teaching style reveals a generosity of spirit that contradicts the stereotype of the hermit woodsman. "The skills aren't mine to keep," he reportedly told one young learner. "They belong to anybody willing to put in the work to master them." Today, Tom faces his greatest challenge yet: the inevitable battle against time itself. At his advanced age, even routine tasks require more careful planning and execution. The brutal Montana winters that once invigorated now threaten with increased severity. The isolation that once offered freedom now carries elevated risks should medical emergencies arise. According to those who have spent time with him recently, Tom approaches this chapter with the same quiet determination that has characterized his entire journey. His movements may have slowed, but his hands remain remarkably steady when working with knife or needle. His endurance has diminished, but his knowledge of how to maximize limited energy has only deepened. The younger man's physical advantages have given way to the older man's refined efficiency. Health concerns, while mostly kept private, have reportedly included issues typical for someone of his age, but potentially more serious given his remote location and limited access to medical care. Sources close to Tom suggest he has experienced heart-related problems in recent years, though the intensely private mountain man has neither confirmed nor denied such reports. The daily realities of aging in the wilderness present practical and philosophical challenges. Tasks like cutting sufficient firewood for Montana's 6-month winters grow increasingly difficult. Hunting requires more patience and strategy to compensate for diminished stamina. The half-mile trek to check mail becomes a significant journey rather than a casual errand. Yet through it all, Tom reportedly maintains the clear-headed perspective that has always characterized his approach to difficulty. "Nature doesn't care how old you are or how you're feeling," he once observed. "The snow falls just as deep, the temperature drops just as low, and the work needs doing regardless." What does it mean to watch a lifelong commitment to self-reliance gradually yield to the inescapable limitations of human mortality? How does one reconcile fierce independence with the increasing need for assistance? Those who know Tom best describe a man making peace with life's final chapter without surrendering his essential character. Compromises that once would have been unthinkable are now accepted with practical grace. Help is received not with resentment, but with the same matter-of-fact approach he has always applied to changing circumstances. The mountain man adapts, as he always has, by assessing conditions clearly and responding appropriately. The television audience has witnessed only glimpses of this transition, as the show naturally emphasizes capability over limitation. But attentive viewers have noted subtle changes: more frequent rests during strenuous tasks, increased preparation before undertaking difficult work, occasional mentions of accommodations to age that the younger Tom would never have needed. What remains undiminished is the extraordinary spirit that first led Tom away from conventional society and into his authentic life. His eyes still brighten when tracking fresh animal signs. His hands still move with practiced precision when crafting buckskin. His deep appreciation for wilderness beauty continues to find expression in simple, profound observations that remind viewers what truly matters. Tom Oar's legacy extends far beyond his television persona. In a world increasingly dominated by virtual experiences and disconnected from natural systems, he stands as a living reminder of capacities most humans have abandoned but not entirely forgotten. His life demonstrates that meaningful alternatives to consumer culture remain possible for those willing to accept their challenges alongside their rewards. For the traditional skills community, Tom represents both preservation and innovation, honoring ancient techniques while adapting them to present circumstances. His brain-tanning methods, his approach to wilderness living, his handcrafted clothing, all contribute to keeping alive knowledge that might otherwise have disappeared entirely from living practice into history books and museum displays. For environmental advocates, his lifestyle offers a complex case study in sustainable living, one that neither romanticizes primitive conditions nor accepts modern excess. Tom's relationship with the natural world demonstrates both utilization and profound respect, harvesting what he needs while ensuring resources remain available for future seasons. For ordinary viewers seeking meaning in increasingly complicated lives, Tom provides something perhaps even more valuable: proof that alternative paths exist for those with courage to pursue them. His evident contentment, despite material simplicity, challenges conventional equations of success with accumulation. His clear purpose contrasts sharply with the confusion many feel despite abundant options. The silence of mountain mornings, the satisfaction of self-created shelter against howling storms, the deep connection to seasonal rhythms most Americans now experience only as changes in recreational activities or wardrobe choices. Tom's life reminds us of experiences once fundamental to human existence, but increasingly foreign to modern sensibilities. "I never felt like I was giving anything up," Tom once reflected. "Always seemed to me I was gaining things most people never get to have anymore." As this remarkable life journey continues its final chapters, those who have followed Tom's story, whether through television screens or personal encounters, can only express gratitude for the window he's provided into a world both vanishing and essential. His willingness to share hard-earned wisdom, to demonstrate forgotten skills, and to articulate values increasingly scarce in modern discourse represents a generous gift to current and future generations. If you've ever been moved by Tom's quiet strength, his remarkable self-reliance, or his evident peace with the path he's chosen, consider leaving a like on this video as a small tribute to a man who has preserved something precious on behalf of us all. Share your favorite memories or lessons learned from watching Tom in the comments below. A digital campfire where his legacy can continue warming those who gather around it. The mountain man, who never sought fame but accepted it with characteristic grace, has given us more than entertainment. He's provided an alternative measure against which to evaluate our own choices, priorities, and relationship with both technology and tradition. In a cultural landscape increasingly defined by artificial urgency and superficial connection, Tom Oar stands as a welcome counterpoint. A reminder that deeper satisfactions await those willing to still themselves enough to receive them. Whatever challenges the coming seasons bring, Tom faces them with the same unshakable character that has carried him through nearly 8 decades of extraordinary living. The hands that have shaped countless hides, built shelters against unforgiving elements, and kept ancient skills alive continue their steady work. Both the physical labor of daily survival and the more profound task of demonstrating a life aligned with its deepest values. In Montana's remote wilderness, as snow blankets the Yaak Valley and smoke rises from the chimney of a hand-built cabin, America's mountain man tends his fire. And in doing so, tends something more. The flickering light of traditional knowledge that illuminates possibilities many thought extinguished by time's passage. For this, and for the courage to live authentically when easier paths beckoned, we offer our respect, gratitude, and sincere wishes for many more seasons of the life he has so remarkably crafted.